Hey everybody, welcome to the Bro-Op Bites podcast. I'm your host, Mace.
And I'm your co-host, Proteus.
Alright, Proteus. Today, we are going to be talking about backlog management, and we will also later be talking about some games that are coming out in the next month or so. But, just to start off our episode, to let everybody know, we are trying to build a community here, so if you have any comments, have anything that any input that you want to put into our discussion, please leave a comment and we will make a point of trying to bring it up in a future episode. Obviously, depending on how many responses we get, we might not get to everything, but we will always make our best effort to at least respond to the comment directly using the comment section or bring it up in an actual episode. So please do that. Today we're going to talk about backlog management. I feel like it's been a hot topic on YouTube recently. I don't know, maybe that's just things that I've been searching, but I've seen a lot of videos talking about gaming backlogs.
No, I don't think it's just you, honestly. It's popped up quite a bit over the last month or two, and lots of videos about it have shown up in my feed.
Yeah, so maybe it is just a trending topic. So, kind of curious, how do you feel about your backlog?
Well, it's too large for me to ever play, so I think that's a point that I've come to realize as of late. Of like, there are almost an endless amount of games that are out there, and I just don't have time to play all of them. And for that, like, coming to that realization, it's kind of sad because there's so many games nowadays that are released every month now that are interesting or different, and looking back and saying, hey, I haven't even finished the games from a year ago or 5 years ago or 10 years ago even.
Yeah, and I mean, even just
Yeah,
games that you own, right?
exactly. Yes. It's
Do you mind sharing?
mind sharing how many.
Like,
um
how big is your library?
I cracked 2K recently.
Oh, 2,000 games. Wow.
Yes.
And that's just your Steam library. You play on other platforms.
Absolutely. So that is definitely not all of them. That would definitely go up a few hundred, at least a few hundred more,
Yeah.
based on other consoles. Definitely PlayStation consoles from back from PS2, PS3, PS4.
And you have a pretty substantial physical collection too.
Yes, and that's why. Yeah, that's why
Yeah.
I said it'd be in the probably hundreds. Maybe
Yeah, I
it'd be
know.
in
I've
the thousands.
I've
So.
actually seen your physical collection, and I remember being like, "This game hasn't even been opened yet."
Yeah, and some of them may never be opened, or I may
Yeah,
sell them. I don't know.
it kind of reminds me of. Have you ever watched Scott the Woz?
Yes, a couple times.
Okay,
So.
so he has a huge collection, and I don't remember, and probably shouldn't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure in one of his episodes he talked about the fact that like he owns a lot of games that he's never played, and he probably will never play, just because there's not
Yeah,
enough time. There's
there's
not
not enough
enough
time. Yeah,
time.
if I input them in, like, how long to play on that website, because I think you can put your whole collection in there. I think there's a way to do that on that profile, and there's a couple other sites that do it too. But it'll give you like an estimated time to
Like how
complete.
long it will take to complete your entire
Yes,
library?
like it has like an average.
What?
Yeah, it has. Well,
Oh
by
man.
game you can look it up. It has like the minimum time where it's like just story plus side quest, 100% or platinum or whatever.
Wow.
And yeah, it's sometimes, and that's actually that goes into backlog management. Like, I've thought about it, and I've used that side a little bit when I'm looking at either starting a new game or playing like an old one. It's like,
Sure.
do I want to invest that much time into it? And
Oh, it
sometimes
is a
I've been
hundred
like, no.
percent a part of my thing. Like, I
Yeah.
will look up a game now before I even buy it nowadays. I will look up how long does it take to beat it,
Yeah.
and
Uh,
is the game interesting enough to me that I'm willing to put in that kind of time. I'm not
yeah.
saying that I'm like, oh, the game is 50 hours long. I'll never buy a 50-hour long game. That's not true.
Mhm.
It's just if it's super long, it better be really interesting to me. Otherwise, I'm probably not going to buy it. I'm probably never going to play it.
Yeah, and that's the thing with games is that, there's a wide variety, obviously. Some, a lot of the indie games that you like to play, some of those are definitely on the shorter side.
I mean, some
And
games
then
that I've played this year are probably like 5 hours long.
yeah, which back in the day when I was still in college, I was like, 5 hour game, 6 hour game. That's what's going on? Like, why are they all getting so short? And that was like when on 360 and PS3, like some of the games were coming
Oh,
out that
yeah.
were everyone's like, oh, these are it's only 6 hours long. What do you mean? Like the old PS2 and GameCube games were a lot longer than that. And it's like it
Yeah.
would be a talking point, which you know,
It's definitely on our list of
yes,
possible topics to talk about, like how we
absolutely, but
value games and.
yeah, and that's the thing. Like looking at the backlog, so since we've already said, like, I've looked back, my count is that I don't have a like my entire lifetime. I don't think I could actually play and finish everything in my library, and
Hmm.
a lot of them I don't think I'd want to be perfectly honest, just
Oh
because some
yeah.
of them
Well, and
I
you
have a
get a
lot of
lot of stuff from like Humble Bundle and
yeah,
that kind of thing, right?
and so some of
And
those games like they're just included, and while they
do you
might be cool
typically
for
do the
somebody,
whole like you're like, oh, it's free, so I'm going to claim it because maybe one day I might play it?
yes,
Okay, yeah. See, I
just in
used to do
case.
that, and then I got to the point where I was just like, I am not going to play this game. There are 50 other games already in my library that I would rather play than this, and I will probably never play those games, so no,
Yeah.
I'm not buying that. I'm not going to even claim it. I actually went through my Steam library recently and literally removed some games because you can remove them. You
Wait,
can
you
say, I
can?
don't want to own this anymore.
Really? I did not know that. I was
Yeah,
actually curious about that before because I've claimed some like
it's an
free games
interesting, it's kind of
that
a
I was just like,
buried process on how to
yeah,
do it. But yes, you can remove them completely and they just will not show up in your library. You will never be able to download them again. You will have to purchase it again
really?
if you want it.
That's
But
interesting. I'm glad you
they
mentioned
were
that.
like things that I got from like I did some of those stupid random key things where you
Oh, and
pay
like
like $1
fanatical.
for a random key. Yes.
Yeah, and it gives
And
you or it gives you five keys or
okay,
something, and some of them are just trash.
okay. To anybody listening right now, don't do it. It's a trap. They show you Armored Core 6. You're not getting Armored Core. You're not.
Yeah. If you look at they actually do
You're
post
getting
the odds.
I actually one of the games that I got is exactly the kind of game that you typically get. It's called Protect Santa. And it was a mostly negative game
Oh
and
man.
not one that I was interested in playing anyway. And that was actually the big reason why I was like, I got to get these out of my library. I don't even want people to see that I own these. This is
Yeah.
embarrassing.
Well, I've actually in the last couple of years, like you said, I have gotten keys that I just didn't activate because I was like, I'm not playing. I'm never going to play that, and
Yeah,
so I
yeah,
like
yeah.
just didn't claim them. And I was like, and in some cases, it's like that's something that I'm not really interested. It may not be a bad game,
Hmm.
but it's not. It's one I'm not interested in. So I've kept the keys just in case I have a friend that wants to play, like that may show interest, and I'm like,
Oh
okay,
yeah.
well, I can
I
give
think
them a
you
key.
actually have given me some keys that
Yeah,
were
yeah.
like, oh, I'm just not interested in this, but are you?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
yeah, that's why I keep some of them around just in case somebody that I know may want
Yeah,
them.
yeah,
Or
yeah.
the other was it the last month of Humble Choice, I actually had a key for something that I was on, I think X, formerly known as Twitter, and somebody
Yeah.
was was asking. They're just like, "Hey, like I'm really interested in this game. Like I have some other keys. Like if you want to do a trade." And so I did a trade with somebody on there, and it was actually pretty. I didn't have anything to lose because like I'm never gonna play this game. So if they take it and don't give me a key, I'm like I honestly don't care.
Yeah, sure.
So but they were really nice about it. Like they were like, hey, they gave me a list of like 20 game keys that they had, and I was like, I think I picked one that you owned. I'm trying to remember which one it was, but
Hmm.
it was a boomer shooter, I think. So
Oh,
that's why I say that.
could be
Yeah,
a number of things. Is it one that I actually played, or is it just one that I own?
I'd have to. Oh man, what was it called? I wish it showed it. It's been too long for me of activating it. So
Yeah,
it
let's
was one. I think you played it actually. It was not super new, but it was one that
not.
looked kind of cool.
Was it Dusk?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No, it wasn't Dusk. It wasn't Dusk. It was a different one. But
Yeah, well,
anyways,
I mean, we'll have
so
to figure it out one
with
day. It's not important right now.
yeah, going back to it, like so, with like now I've come to a point where I'm like, I used to claim every key from every humble bundle, every whatever promotional bundle, any free games. And then it's just like recently it's like, well, I'll probably never touch that one. But if I will add it to my library if there's something that, I think may be interesting or may want to try at some point. Going to figure out like what games that I want to play. I actually in the last month I put together I wanted to do something kind of systematic about
Okay.
it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so I went back and I'm like, okay, realistically, what could I try to play? And I went through and I was like, okay, there's a lot of old games I have that I'm just not even right now. I'm gonna try to see, what do I want to play that I haven't played over the last. And I went, but this is probably longer than I should have went back, but I went back 10 years. And so I said, what are the top 5 games for each year for the last like 10 years that either, and I did it like by release date. So like what came out in 2021, what came out in, 2019.
Okay.
Um, and I kind of listed them out and then I kind of ranked them to get to my top 5. And I even
Interesting.
coded them. I coded which games have I, because a lot of them I already started playing and have been in. So I said, okay, what games am I already playing or have started that I could go back into?
So
What
you
games?
favored things that you've already touched.
Yeah. So it's like some
Interesting.
of those. It's like I already started them. I never finished them. So I want to go back and either try to finish them or not. And then also which ones are, you know, longer games and which ones are indie games, which typically have shorter, play times. And then which ones are, if I were to, have, unlimited time or extra time, like which ones would I want to go to? And
Okay.
so
Sure.
with that, it's giving me a top list and I'm like, it seems more manageable to me. I'm like, okay, well, I can look at this game. Once I'm done with it, I cross it off and then I go see like which one do I want to move on to. And with that one, it helped me see like I have a lot of great games that I just have not finished or haven't even played, but that I could. And so it's like, hey, what if I want? I can go back, and there's another topic for another day of like of AAA games at least declining over the years, and the fact that going back that far helps me to appreciate how good those games were, at the time
Oh,
and how they
sure.
even
Yeah.
hold up to this day. And so, being
That's
able
interesting.
to, yeah,
That's
yeah,
interesting because I go back and play some older games that were like well
mhm.
beloved, and a lot of
Yeah.
times for me, I'm like, ooh,
Oh, really?
like this is missing a lot of quality of life features. Like,
Hmm.
I'm mixed on it, right? I think that it's easy to look back and say, oh, all of this old stuff is just so good. Like, it was
Yeah.
so great.
It is easy to say
And in
that.
some ways it is, and in some
Yeah.
ways it's also easy to forget how much crap was released.
Oh yeah. I mean, if you go back far, I mean, it's hard. Like the PS1 era is really hard.
Oh,
N64.
I mean,
Even some PS2 games. I mean, there are some I'm like,
oh,
oh man, that's like whatever. And then yeah, technical issues.
I think they're. I
And
think every generation has
yeah, there's always
it's
something.
kind of just garbage.
But even then, I have gone back, and I mean, playing Burnout 3, man, like that. I'm like, that's a great game. Like it holds up. SSX3, like extreme sports
Mm.
game, racing game. So I'm like, they still
And
play.
there's some genres that just have never really like they kind of had their day and then they went
Hmm.
away and now it's gone forever. But
Yeah, and
anyway, back
that's
back to your
yeah.
your backlog
Yeah,
stuff.
so I've tried
Okay.
to make it, reasonable or something that I can go after. And then that helps me to not, say, "Oh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I have to play the newest game or I have to try it," which sometimes, if it's a multiplayer game or whatever.
You
Yeah.
said you went back by year and
Mhm.
you picked out these games.
Yes.
So,
All
do you
games that I
have
own. Yeah.
like a list that you're like working through and whenever you finish something or whenever you're done with something, you look at this list and you're like, "Oh, um these are my options."
Well, the ones I'm trying to focus on are the ones that I already started because I
You're
think it's
right,
like
right,
I'm
right.
already in the middle
But
of
you
them,
have a
and
list, right?
yeah, I
Like
mean, it's
some
part of
kind of
that.
physical thing you can go look at.
Yes, and that I think helps make it where it's like I can get through this. It's not just, hey, I have like all these games, I don't know, never know what to play. And when I do go back, I've already crossed some off because like I wrote them down and I'm like, I
Yeah.
tried to go back and play them. I'm like, you know what?
Yeah,
I don't want to
maybe not.
invest the time in it. Like
Yeah,
it's
sure.
like if a game that like there
I
that's the
probably
thing.
should get better about that. Well, we'll talk
It's
about
like
that when we get to my backlog.
yeah, it's like if a game like there are times when a game hits and you're playing,
Oh
you're like, this
yes.
is
And you're
good.
just like, "Ooh,
And
this
then
is the stuff right here."
there's time when it doesn't. And you're like,
Yeah, sure.
I don't know about this. And
I'm,
some of them
I
I
have a
listed
great
and I tried.
example of that
Yeah.
recently. Oh boy, what was it? It was super recently. I started on a game, and it was just like I was expecting to love it,
Mm-hmm.
and then I was
Oh.
just like, this is not good. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I am not enjoying this. I want to say it was Crisis,
Oh, the original.
the
Yeah.
original Crisis. Now,
Ooh.
I don't know why I thought that I was going to love it, because
Yeah.
the only thing I ever hear about Crisis is that it's basically, it was like the benchmark, right? Oh, can it run Crisis? And then I've heard some people say some good stuff about Crisis 2, but that wasn't
Yeah.
what I was playing. I was playing Crisis 1,
Crisis One. Yes.
and
Yes.
it was not hitting for me.
Yeah. It's a
No.
very
But
yeah.
that's the thing, and I think that's one of the differences between you and I, at least currently, is I have taken this approach of if I start it,
You
unless I
gotta finish it,
hate
right?
it, I'm gonna finish it.
Yeah, and that's great. I mean, that's one way to do it, and I think you do get probably the most value of like time out of a game. But
Yeah,
like,
sure.
and I used to think that that's what you had to do, but
I'll tell you the reason why I do that. It's because when I'm playing a game, I want to give it a fair shot at being good.
yeah.
Because back when I first got back into gaming, so I got back into gaming as an adult. I was like 26 when I got back into gaming. When I first got back into it, I was just like, I'm gonna just try this and try this and try this and try this. And I was just blowing through games. I'd put in like 30 minutes, an hour, and then I'd be like, it's not really hitting. I'm on to the
Mhm.
next one, right? I did that with a game that has become one of my favorites. That is Metal Gear Solid 5. I played
Oh,
probably like the first 30 minutes,
oh, that's
hour
rough
of
because
it.
that yeah, the prologue's a little
Oh, the
hard on that
prologue is
game.
bad. It's
Yeah.
terrible. And it's funny because I've talked to other people about it since then, and
Hmm.
I have another friend, and I was talking to him about Metal Gear Solid 5, and he was like, "Yeah, I started that game, and it just was not really very good." And I was like, "Well, how far did you get?" And he said, "I played the prologue." And I was like, "Well, yeah,
Oh.
the prologue sucks." It's terrible, and it has no like
Um,
it does not reflect the gameplay of the actual game at all. But my point
yeah.
is just the first few hours of that game, I didn't really enjoy it. But when I did come back to it, and I was like, I'm gonna give it a bit more time.
Yeah.
I loved it. It was phenomenal. I think it's one of the best sandboxes ever made.
Yeah.
It's so good. So that's kind of why I approach my backlog more like that. Like, oh, I'm going to finish it, even
Hmm.
if I don't really love it at first.
Yeah.
The
That
problem
makes
is
sense.
I am hitting a point where it's like, okay, my backlog is growing faster than I can
Yeah, reasonably
play.
keep up
Yeah,
to.
I
Yeah.
can't keep up, so it's just starting to bloat.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, once I wrote down my list and saw like everything I really wanted, like I was like, man, I'd like to play that and that and that. And it's like, well, I don't think I can. Like, I just
Hmm.
don't know if I can. And so,
So do you feel
yeah,
bad for buying games that you're not going to play?
sometimes I am obviously a collector and I do check values and
Hmm.
see if I could sell it or whatever. But for
Sure.
some that like, there's some that it's like I like the publisher, I like the series or
Yeah.
whatever, and it ties into that of like getting that collection of the full set.
Yeah.
But if I'm not like a lot of them, like it's I guess all of the games to it like are potential, and that potential being like it could be an awesome experience, and maybe it's not right now, maybe it's years down the road that I go back and try it.
Yeah.
But
I
now
don't.
that
It doesn't
yeah,
bother me.
yeah.
Because to me, it's like, I have an interest in this type of game. And typically, when I buy a game, it's either because I love the premise, I love the idea, the design
Hmm.
philosophy that went into it, or it's something that I already know, like, I'm going to play. You know what I mean? And especially with like big budget games,
Yeah.
I don't buy it unless I know I'm gonna play it. So I feel like when I buy a game, even if I'm not necessarily playing it, I
Hmm.
always have intention of playing it, but then sometimes it just falls back and never
Yeah.
really rises back up. I feel like I'm supporting that developer for doing something that I like,
Yeah.
and I'm also sending that message into the games industry of saying, I want more stuff like this. I want
And
more interesting
yeah, I
ways
agree
of
with that.
playing. I don't want another military shooter. Not that, I mean, that trend has kind of died out by now, but
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. That's something I've for years I've wanted to show support to developers like a game that I is in my backlog that you've played Vanquish. That was one that when it came out,
oh
um,
yeah, Vanquish. Yeah.
I wanted to support Platinum and stuff at the time because they were still pretty up and coming, and that was like one of their only other games after Bayonetta. And so I wanted to show support because I thought it was so interesting and such a different. Like I'd played the demo for the game, and I was like, man, this is like cool. And so I wanted to support them in that. And so I get that sentiment. And so
So wait a minute.
it's yeah.
You've played that one though, right?
Yeah, I've played.
Oh,
Well, I haven't beaten it. I played a big
yeah.
chunk of it and just got sidelined. So
Yeah, I mean that happens, but I
yeah, I
was
played
like,
it for several
wait a minute, wait a
hours.
minute. You've played some of it. I know because
Oh
you
yeah, yeah,
recommended it to me and I played
yeah. I
through the
have a
whole
bunch of
thing.
like I played it back on PS3, so it didn't play very well. But
Oh yeah, I bet it ran so much better on PC for it was so smooth on PC.
yeah, that was the thing. Like I did buy the upgrade on Steam or whatever. But like yeah, when I
Yeah,
played it,
yeah.
it was still I still thought it was an amazing experience, and I did play it for several hours and was trying to unlock all the trophies and stuff. But back in the day. But
Yeah,
yeah,
sure.
so like stuff like that. It's like that was something that was cool. Like I was just like, man, I want to support them. Like that is different. Like they are
Yeah,
doing
totally.
stuff differently. And same thing with a lot of the like NIS or what is it? Some of the other RPG developers from Japan that have very limited resources, smaller teams. Like I just want to make sure that
Yeah.
they still stick around and keep making different games.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Okay, so
but
let me show you
yeah,
what I got going on in terms of backlog management, how I've decided to go about it. Now, for those listening, I am the opposite of Michael here. Michael he will play on any platform. And do you prefer console? I know you prefer
um,
controller typically.
typically, I mean I would say I usually do, but nowadays it comes down to perform. Like where does it perform the best? I mean, if
Yeah,
it's fine
sure.
on
And
consoles, I'll
that's
put
not
the
always
consoles.
PC. That's not always
Yeah,
PC.
exactly. So wherever it's
Um,
performing the best, I usually try to play
yeah,
there.
sure, sure.
So.
I am fairly uh, I'm a one platform kind of guy. I play on PC. I own an Xbox. I don't use it. It just gathers dust ever since I built my PC, and it's an Xbox One. It's not. I don't have a Series. I had a Nintendo Switch, which I felt that one was justified because yes, I mean Nintendo has experiences you can't get anywhere else.
Hmm.
The problem that I had and the reason why I got rid of it was because their games are too expensive and they never go on sale. But that's just another story completely. The point is, I essentially play on PC always, and I have played on other launchers, but almost always I am on Steam. So most of my library, almost my entire library, is on Steam. Um, so what I did was I just categorized everything. I said, okay, this is an action game. Now, action in mine is very, very broad. It can mean a number of things. But then I have boom shoots, I have standard shooters, or just shooters, which could be third person, first person, whatever.
Yeah.
Um, I have horror games. I have strategic, survival, racing, platformers. I have a
Nebulous.
yeah, Nebulous. So Nebulous is
Was that?
intended to be like this doesn't really fit neatly into other genres that you typically see. I mean, I can show you stuff. So Death Stranding, I
Okay.
don't think really fits in with anything particularly
Yeah,
well.
it's a Strand game, and there's not
Yeah,
many Strand games out there. So.
my point and click adventures are in here. Thumper could probably be moved to action, but I have it here.
Yeah.
Puzzlers usually will fall in here. Anyway, so yeah, that kind of thing. A car mechanic simulator. That one's in here. Anyway, the point is, yeah, it's stuff that doesn't fit neatly into anything else. Um, so then I also created a DNF bin, which
Oh,
is basically games that I started and I did not
I
finish.
guess.
It's very
Yeah.
short,
Oh, yeah.
which is funny because one of them needs to be moved because I'm currently playing Divinity Original Sin 2 and then Dump. Dump is just like, okay, so for instance, Wolfenstein Spear of Destiny they did a re-release of Wolfenstein and Spear of
Yeah.
Destiny is built into it, so this is redundant now.
Oh,
Um,
gotcha.
these friend passes for the Dark Picture Chronicles actually don't, or the Dark Pictures anthology, they don't work. I don't even know why they distribute these anymore because if you actually look it up, these only worked for like I think the first few weeks after the game released,
Oh, wow.
and then they stopped working. And that was by design, but yeah. Anyway, so these are just things that either I will never play because they're dumb, or
They just yeah,
they're
it just
things that are
doesn't.
just redundant. Um, dumb. I shouldn't say dumb. Some people probably like these. Um, Ori, I have the definitive edition. If anybody is looking at this, I'm not talking crap on Ori, by the way. Anyway, so yes, then I have my finished. Things that
Mhm.
I've finished are moved here. Now, I move them out of the genre bins. when they are finished,
Mm-hmm.
which may end up biting me in the butt later on, but that's how I'm doing it for now. And
Yeah.
then what I did was I created what's called the big queue. The big queue,
Okay.
which is sitting at 200 games right now. This is everything that I intend on playing that I have not played yet.
Ooh, I see some good ones in there. So,
Yeah. Some of these could
uh,
probably move, but yeah, it's a big queue. It's so many games.
wow.
And then what I do to decide what I'm going to play next is I have a short list.
Okay.
Now, my short list started out as being no more than, I believe it was 18 games.
Mm-hmm.
And then I decided to add more just because it was getting to the point where there were some games where it was like, oh, well, this is in my short list because it's the second installment in a franchise, like Dead
Yeah.
Space 2,
Yeah.
Crisis 2, um, Batman Arkham City, different things like that, where it's like, oh, I already started on a franchise, so I don't want to take it out of my short list, but I also don't
Mm-hmm.
want half of my short list to be just, oh, this is the next installment in the franchise.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the rest of them are games that like I intend on playing soon. Um, and it's worked out pretty well for me. It helps when I'm finishing something and I'm trying to decide, okay, what comes next.
Yeah.
So yeah, um, it's worked
Yeah, I
out pretty
like
well
that.
for me.
Yeah, I think that's a good system. I think, yeah, for me, like a lot of these are on console. Like I was looking at it, I'm like, whew, a lot of these are on console, and there's a few that are on Steam on my list, but a lot of them
Oh,
aren't.
so a lot
Yeah.
of these are games that are on your list,
Hmm.
but you're not necessarily going to play them on Steam.
Yeah, there's. I mean, a lot of the games I already got on console and don't have
Mm-hmm.
on Steam, or maybe I do have it, and sometimes I just like I was saying earlier, it's like I sometimes prefer playing on console.
Oh yeah,
So,
sure.
but yeah, it's my method is not as organized as yours, and I think the only way I could do something similar would be with GOG Galaxy. I don't know if you've used that
Oh
before,
yeah,
where
it
it
would still
integrates.
not work great though, right?
Yeah,
Because
because
that mainly integrates your launchers rather
well, that's the
than
thing. So it
it's
pulls.
still almost PC centric, right?
No, it's not actually. It pulls
Oh,
your
really?
console. It pulls your own list of console games on Xbox and PlayStation.
Okay, but it will not work
Though,
with Nintendo.
no, not Nintendo, but they
Yeah,
do.
because
The only thing is, it's digital content, so it would only pull my digital games from
yeah,
each of
that's right,
those.
because you have a lot of physical stuff.
Yeah, but
You would literally
yeah,
have to you would have to do data entry.
I actually have. So I have cataloged almost all of my physical games. So I do have an app for that.
Yeah.
What it's
Okay,
like a
so
collection thing. So I think there's another one that one of our.
you could create like a really complicated spreadsheet, an Excel
Yeah,
file with like different pages, and
yeah, which I mean it may
it would
evolve from because
that
my
would
current
take you a
list.
long time to put
Well, my
together, but
current list is in Excel. So
oh, is it really?
yeah,
See,
because I
there you
mean
go. You're already halfway there. Not halfway,
yeah,
but
so partially. So, anyways,
yeah.
but I like your method. I like having it where it's organized, and then you kind of move stuff around, and I think it keeps it cleaner, and helps you kind of have like you said, that what's next in queue, and seeing like what do you want to do. So
Yeah, and the other thing that I do is that I try and make sure to keep different itches, is
genres
what I
are
call it. Like different
yeah,
itches, right?
yeah,
So, the Mullet Mad Jack is not going to
hmm,
scratch the same itch as Chernobylite,
no,
and that's not going to scratch the same itch as Dredge, right?
yeah,
So, I almost wish that I had a way of putting these itches into words and I could just categorize based off of itch rather than
yeah.
a genre.
Yeah, because sometimes, yeah, because not everything fits nicely into a genre bucket.
Yeah.
So,
And
yeah,
sometimes different games from different genres will scratch the same itch,
yeah,
right? So,
yeah, that's
yeah,
true.
it's tough. It's tough. But despite this, I still feel that feeling of I'll never play all of the games I want to play.
Absolutely.
It will never happen. And the best thing that I think that doing this management thing,
Hmm.
the best thing that it helps is that it allows me to sift out things that maybe aren't as worth my time.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like with the hobby of gaming, it's like you have to make the choices on like what do you want to invest time in? Like, is it experiencing a
Mm-hmm.
story or type of gameplay or an experience? Because some of these, like, I mean, I know that Doki Doki Literature Club or Outer Wilds or Pacific Drive, those are very unique game types or experiences, and so
Yeah.
like they are sometimes it's just entertainment, sometimes it's just like somewhat of a
Uh
story
huh.
or like something, but it's not always a typical game where it's like, okay, you're
Yeah.
beating levels or you're doing this or you're just progressing. And sometimes they require skills, sometimes they don't. And so, like when we're using our time, like our, free time, it's like you gotta pick what you want to do. And so
Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
think it helps me, say like, what do I want to invest in? Like right now, like one of the ones that it's top of my list to finish playing is what we've talked about before is Persona 3 Reload,
Oh
which
yeah.
is super long. It is a very long game, but it has that, for me, it's the cross between the gameplay, the story, and just like the style. And so
Yeah.
like
Absolutely.
that's like a lot of things. Whereas, I may not, like we talked about in our previous episode, is like, I want to go back and try Ghostwire Tokyo, but it's not really up there at the moment. So,
Yeah.
I'm not
Absolutely.
not going to be going after that one. So, and
I mean, it's tough.
it
It
is,
is
and
really. And so something that you said, and this is why I kind of encourage people, especially people who have a lot of games they want to play, to do stuff like this. I think it also helps me to kind of get out of playing the same kind of game all the time. Because a lot of times, like I'll finish a shooter, and then I'll be like,
mhm,
okay, what else is there? And let me do something else, and
yeah,
it
like
gives me
Dredge.
something that I can just visualize. Yeah, dredge. All
Yeah,
right,
it's
try
very
that
different.
one. Yeah. So it helps
And
to be a little bit more variety oriented and
yeah, you don't just get stuck on the same genre, same style, or same, I guess, franchise. So
yeah. So with
yeah.
backlog refinement, I kind of want to bring up this one point too, and this is something
Hmm.
that I've seen a few people talk about is conquering your backlog.
Yeah,
And what I see a lot of times watching these videos, sometimes people will openly admit they're like, it's pointless. You're not going to conquer your backlog. There's
mhm.
no such thing.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree.
I had thought before, like, oh, I'm just gonna, I feel like I need to play every game that I own at least a little bit, so I'm just gonna play every game that I own 2 hours each, right?
Yeah.
At least give it a try. And then
Yeah.
I started doing the math. I was like, that's 400 hours.
Yeah. That's
That's 400 hours. And with
yeah.
how much I play in a week, like, I mean, we're talking about that's a big commitment.
It
400
is. Yeah, and
hours?
I don't think it's something like we've gotten to a point where like, games are so available and there's so many of them, and that, people trying
Yes.
to, like you said, conquer the backlog. It's like, why? Like, what's the point? Like,
Yep.
if you're, and for me, that's why, like I said, my approach has been different than you have in the past, where you're trying to like you went about it trying to complete everything. I'm like, if
Mm-hmm.
I try it, and it may be that it doesn't hit at that time, and maybe I have to come back to it because that's happened before. I'm trying to remember. There was a particular game I tried years ago that just did not. hit when it was new, and I didn't play it. And then years later, I picked it up, and I'm like, wow, this actually just feels good to play. I want to play it.
Yeah.
And so sometimes that happens, but sometimes it's the reverse where it like I thought I liked it, and I tried it again, and I'm like, no, I'm not gonna
Yeah.
even bother finishing that. That's
Yeah. I'm
that
just gonna step away.
Yeah, and there's like one of the ones it's slightly older than 10 years. It was Killzone Shadowfall. It was one of the original PlayStation 4 launch games,
Oh, really?
and I
Okay.
loved Killzone 2 was a great PS3 game. I loved Killzone 2 and 3. And Shadowfall was like the successor. And I
Oh,
remember
for some reason, I was
liking
getting
it.
mixed up there. I was
Yeah,
thinking Killing Floor, and I was like,
oh,
two and
no,
three.
no.
Three isn't
This was
even
one
out
of the
yet. Okay,
Sony,
yes.
yeah,
So
Sony
Killzone,
exclusives.
I know which one you're talking about now.
Yeah, so Shadowfall was like the first like at the time PS4 next gen like
Yeah,
version. And I
yeah.
remember liking it, but like it and I played the multiplayer quite a bit, but then something else came up and I just didn't have time to play it, and it fell off, and I went back and I was like I was kind of surprised, like graphics held up pretty well for being over 10 years old. But
Yeah.
I tried to play it for like 2 hours and I was like, no, I'm done.
Yeah, it's not worth it.
I'm
I've
good. And so I
experienced this as much as I need to.
Yeah, and I crossed it off. I'm like, it doesn't need to be on my list anymore, so it's
Yeah.
gone. So
Well, can I say one other thing though about
yeah, sure.
so I feel like doing it the way that I've been doing it has also made me
Hmm.
realize something that one of the biggest satisfactions that I get out of gaming is finishing.
Oh
And
yeah, so it's big for you.
I feel like I've played so much less like multiplayer games, live service games, that
Hmm.
kind of thing, because I'm like, there's no end. Like, there's nothing
Yeah.
I'm working towards. And
Hmm.
there's just like this certain feeling of euphoria that I get when I finish a game, when I roll credits. I
Yeah.
love watching the credits and just being like, yeah, I finished this game.
Yeah, there is like when you finish a good like I mean like on your screen I see Yakuza 0 and I was like I worked
Oh,
really hard
yes.
like 2 years ago to play that game, and yeah, when I beat it and I was like, whoa, I actually beat it. It was like
Yeah.
it felt pretty good.
Man, I
So
played Kiwami
yeah.
earlier this year. Yakuza
Yeah.
Kiwami earlier this year,
Yeah.
and man, yeah, that one was good. That was a good feeling finishing that one. Sometimes it's bittersweet though. Like that's the other thing is that sometimes I finish them and I'm like,
You didn't want it to end,
oh,
or
I
it's
don't
like
want this
it's
to
done.
end. But
Yeah,
then when I try and play more of the end game, I'm like, okay, this just isn't doing it. It's not hitting the same anymore.
exactly. It's like yeah, it is sometimes bittersweet, sometimes it's nice. And that's the thing with games. It's like they all have different like beating the game or whatever. It has different
Yep.
impacts on you. But I think yeah, that that makes a lot of sense. Like for you, that you get the enjoyment of finishing the game. For me, like sometimes it's the experience, and like that I got to experience specific gameplay mechanics or
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I,
crazy graphics.
yeah, I think that's why I often prioritize a lot of the indie titles on my list,
Mhm. Yeah,
is because they typically are more unique and they do experiment more in terms of like gameplay and yeah.
yeah, yeah. I
Anywho,
like trying that. So
so let's move on to our last topic here, and we'll just both share one game,
yeah.
something that's coming out in the next few weeks or so. One that I wanted to share was actually called Death Sprint.
Oh,
I think I've talked to you about this one before, but
yeah. I
this
think you
one,
showed me a trailer once, and I was like, I thought it looked pretty crazy. So.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so I actually got to play the play test for this. They did a play test this, oh, what was it? It was either like late last week or early this week.
Mhm.
I don't remember. Um, a racing game. It's running, which is
Running, yeah.
bizarre, totally different from what you've played before in terms of, I mean,
Oh man.
I'm not going to say there aren't already running games. I'm sure there are. But this is pretty unique in that the way I would describe it is it's ultra violent Mario Kart with parkour.
Yeah, that looks
Because
pretty insane. Yeah.
It's insane. So there's like wall running that you can do. There are these like grinding rails that you can use. You can hit a button to drift, and so you like do a slide that turns you around corners.
Oh, nice.
Um, there is like if you go down a big slope, you'll slide. You can jump,
Hmm.
and your leap is insane. You leap so far in that game. Um, it's really it's a really unique experience. And then
Yeah,
you can pick up items, right? Like there's like a
like
buzz
power ups
saw
and
that
stuff.
you can throw.
Yeah.
There's a raging bull mode, which is essentially bullet bill.
Hmm.
Like when I say it's very obvious that they were inspired by Mario Kart.
Yeah,
It's very
that's
obvious.
pretty cool. No, yeah, that looks
Yeah.
interesting. I
And I
might check it
mean,
out.
if anybody is interested in knowing more about it, they are publishing dev diaries leading up to release. They've only released one so far, but yeah, it's a good interesting video to watch to learn a little bit more about like their thoughts
Yeah,
in terms of design and yeah.
yeah, that's really
So
cool.
that one is coming out soon. I don't remember the date. I have to look again. It is coming out on September 12th. So not too far off.
Yeah, just a
About
couple
about a
weeks.
month.
Yeah,
About a
yeah,
month.
cool.
And I want to say it is not free to play. They actually said they are not putting any live service stuff in it. All the
That's nice to
cosmetics and
hear.
everything is going to be unlocked through playing the game
Yeah,
and doing stuff in the game. So you have to play to unlock stuff, and it's not.
so kind of
There's
like a
no battle
classic racing
pass.
game.
There's no. Yes, which I
That's
am
good.
all for. Anywho, so what do you want to talk about?
One that I was thinking about that's coming out a little later than that. I think it's end of September. Is a game called Reynatus. I'm cautious about it. I mean, it looks. I think it looks cool. It was announced. I want to say at the beginning of the year. Like I hadn't heard anything about it. It's by NAS, which I mentioned before. I like some of their RPGs.
Yeah.
And so it kind of gives a vibe like looking at it, obviously super anime looking, but it is set in Shibuya, which is kind of a very popular
Yeah.
place in Japan, and it's already been used. The game, like that's the thing. So people have looked at it like combat wise and style wise, and it draws a lot of comparisons to The World Ends with You, a Square Enix game, and another Square Enix game, Kingdom Hearts, like in the combat style, and some even reference that the combat looks a lot like the original. I don't know if you when they announced Final Fantasy 13 Versus, which initially like that became Final Fantasy 15, but like in the end. But when it first was announced, it was called Final Fantasy 13 Versus. But like the combat looks very similar to that game, and set in kind of a modern setting where there's like tech and magic and things, and it's like in the real world, but not. I guess is what the vibe I'm getting from it, but it
Yeah.
looks pretty fun. Like it's obviously graphics aren't everything. It's going to be released on Switch, so they have to
Oh,
go to the
sure.
lowest common denominator. But it looks like a fun like action RPG.
Yeah.
And I think I want to say they had one of the writers that worked on Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts, uh, Kazushige Nojima, and then the composer is Yoko Shimomura, who also worked on Kingdom Hearts, as well as like the
Oh,
Mana
interesting.
series and things like that. Um, the director of the game, Takumi Isobe, I haven't heard of them. They worked on a game called Trinity Trigger, which I have heard of. It's a couple years old, but it didn't get great reviews. It's like kind of more of a dungeon crawling RPG. So I think it just looks cool. I don't know, like the style looks cool, the combat looks fun.
Yeah, it looks
I'm,
interesting.
positive
Something.
about it, but interestingly enough, I had mentioned The World Ends with You. They already announced that they're having a crossover with a couple characters from the last game, Neo: The World Ends with You, in
Huh.
this game. So even though they're different
Interesting.
publishers, so they're both Japanese publishers, but NIS and Square Enix are definitely not the same. And so I think it's cool that they were able to get some sort of collaboration going. And then they even announced like they're going to be supporting the game with like multiple free updates for like story episodes and characters. So kind of sounds neat. I mean, I'm hoping that it's good, but I'll just have to keep an eye on it. I haven't really watched any more previews besides the couple trailers that they put out. So that's what I've kind of been looking forward to. So
Nice. Yeah,
yeah,
that one looks interesting. Probably not something that I would be too interested in, but I mean
yeah,
that's
a
just
little
because
different.
I mainly with RPGs, like I have very strict taste. Just
Yeah,
because I don't like, because they're too long for me
exactly,
personally.
exactly.
Yeah, but I definitely understand the appeal, especially having when I was younger, I was really into RPGs. They were kind of my thing,
Yeah,
but I had more time then. So,
exactly.
and the other thing is a lot of them haven't aged well for me. Golden Sun was one of my favorite games coming up, and man, I went back to play that as an adult, and I was like, oof. How
The
did I
grind is
spend so
real.
much time on this game?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
Anyways,
well, that's all we have for the show today. Thanks everybody for listening, and please remember to like and comment. We'll do our best to respond to everybody's comments, and we'll catch y'all later.
yeah. Peace out.